Welcome to ETH, News and Headlines from a Prophetic Perspective. Here at End Time Headlines, our mission is to inform our listeners of the times and seasons in which we are in. In Luke 21:28, we are told, when you begin to see all these things come to pass, lift up your heads. Your redemption is drawing near. And now, founder and pastor of End Time Headlines, Ricky Scaparo.
I want to welcome everybody that's watching this by YouTube. Again, this is Ricky Scaparo, the founder and the pastor and the voice of End Time Headlines. We want to give you a quick prophetic update dealing and regarding with Israel and the latest developments here. So I'm going to go over this, guys, now that everybody's coming here on our Facebook Live session. If you're watching this by YouTube, you can follow us on Facebook at End Time Headlines, and you can like us there, follow us there, and you can watch these live broadcasts as we do these. Again, thank you for everyone for taking the time to join us in these segments. All right, here's what we know. Back on the 16th of March, Israeli military jets reportedly struck military targets near Palmyra in Syria. Okay, then in retaliation to that, Israeli jets were targeted by Syrian anti-aircraft missiles. In fact, a total of 4 Israeli jets were reported to have breached Syrian airspace on Friday morning. Syria come out, and Syrian sources claimed that 1 aircraft was even shot. However, the IDF of Israel insisted that none of the jets were indeed harmed. Then we know from that Israeli defense minister Lieberman came out warning Syria that Israel will destroy its aerial defense system if they, quote, attempt to fire on anti-aircraft missiles at Israeli aircraft again. And then following that, early Monday morning, Israel struck again what appeared to be Hezbollah targets on the Syrian-Lebanese border. And then we had the president of Syria, Bashar Assad, warning Israel on Monday that his country had the right to, quote, defend its borders. And then again, Syrian President Assad recently stated that he expected, now here's where it gets interesting, he come out in a statement expecting Russia to play a crucial role in helping him prevent a future conflict with the nation of Israel. Now, why is this important? Because we'll talk about that in just a second. Let me give you this statement, quote, in reflection to what Assad said and what he expected, here's what he said, quote, defending our borders is our right, speaking of Syria, and it's our duty, not only our right. Assad also reportedly told Russian parliament members who recently paid an official visit to the capital on Monday that he was counting on Russia to prevent Israel from attacking his country in the future. Did you hear who he's... In other words, he's saying we're going to count on Russia to defend us, Syria, in the future against any Israel or Israeli strike. He stated, quote, we are counting on Russia to prevent a conflict with Israel. Assad was quoted as saying by several Russian media outlets. Interfax also quoted him as saying that, quote, Damascus counts on Russia to take a role in order to prevent Israel from attacking Syria in the future. All right, then we move on. Quote, let me give you some more update. Israel is in the midst of preparing for plans in the event that a full-scale war breaking out in the Mideast. They are preparing if Islamic militants in Gaza or Lebanon decide to fully come against them with military force. In fact, according to a new report coming out of Israel, they are currently drawing up contingency plans. And I talked about this a little bit in our last segment we did, but I recognize a lot of people probably didn't see that. So we're going to reiterate some of this if you saw that. So according to sources, Israel is drawing up contingency plans to evacuate up to 250,000 of their civilians from the Israeli border communities to protect them from attacks from Hamas, Hezbollah, and any other Islamic militant groups. Sources indicate that this would be the largest in Israel's history and part of a larger scale plan where the army works to assume to protect the civilians and keep them safe. Now, Let me give you some more things here. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was quoted as telling Russian President Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, that Israeli forces will continue airstrikes in Syria if they deem it to be necessary. Quote, if there is feasibility from an intelligence and military standpoint, we attack and so it will continue, end quote. This comes again from Netanyahu, who made this statement during a visit to China, adding that he had informed Putin of Israel's intentions. And let me give you one last piece here, and we're going to talk about why this is important dealing with Bible prophecy. According to the latest out of Israel, 2,000 Israeli reserves have been called up, and this was an emergency call-up, spontaneous as of Sunday, to simulate war in the Gaza Strip as part of the military's largest planned exercise in 2017. Again, according to sources, the surprise drill began this past Sunday, and it was conducted by the Sinai Division, the Southern Command's Reserve Division. Now, you got all this happening right now, guys. Now, you say, why is this important? Here's why. Now, here's where I'm going to get into some stuff that many of you probably already know. You've already heard this. You've heard me talk about this. But again, I want you to understand that, and I understand that we have a lot more subscribers, a lot more viewers than when we get this every week, guys. Even on our Facebook page, we average around 1,500 new Facebook followers and likes a week. So that's more people coming in. So again, if you've heard this, bear with those who've not heard this, okay? If you go to Psalms chapter 83, it speaks of a prophetic war that, now, I want to say this up front. There's going to be many theological standpoints on this. Some will tell you that this war has already happened, and some will tell you that this war has not happened. I'm one of those who believe that this war has not happened yet, and thus that's why I want to speak to you on this. Psalms chapter 83, it says, "For behold, your enemies make atonement, and those who hate you have lifted up their head." And it's speaking of the enemies of Israel. "They have taken crafty counsel against your people," the Jewish people, "and consulted together against your sheltered ones." Speaking of Israel dwelling in a time of safety. "They have said," quote, "come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. For they have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy against you." Now, let's talk about this formed confederacy that will rise up against the nation of Israel. Here it is. It gives you these nations. Ready? Now, these are the nations that are named from an historical standpoint from thousands of years ago when this was written, okay? And then we're going to give you the modern names of these nations. All right, here they are: the tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria also has joined with them, and they have helped the children of Lot. Okay, and then he goes on and he says, and as a result of this, these nations coming together against Israel, that God himself will defend the nation of Israel. Now, let me give you these in modern definitions, okay? So here's your list of coalition. This is the coalition that's the confederacy that's formed against the nation of Israel in this prophetic war of Psalms chapter 83. You have the tents of Edom, which translates to today is the Palestinians and the southern Jordanians. Okay, then you have the Ishmaelites, which is the Saudi Arabians today. The Moab, which is again the Palestinians and the central Jordanians. You have the Hagarites, which is the Egyptians. You have Gebal, which is the northern Lebanese. You have Ammon, which is the Palestinians and the northern Jordanians. The Amalek, which is the Arabs of south of Israel. Philistia, which is simply the Palestinians and those of Hamas of the Gaza Strip. You have the inhabitants of Tyre, which is Hezbollah and southern Lebanese. And then you have Assyria, which at the time that this was written consisted of Syria and Iraq. Again, Syria and Iraq. So this is where Syria is involved. So Syria is directly involved in the future prophetic war of Psalms 83, which again is this confederacy of nations that will rise against Israel. Then you have the children of Lot, which is simply Moab and Ammon. Okay, this again. So I've given you these names of these nations. Now, what's interesting in this, all right, if we go to the, now let me go up here. I want to show you. Again, I told you that according to sources, Syria, Bashar Assad of Assyria is trying to get the reassurance of Russia that Russia will come alongside with him and defend Syria in any future conflict with Israel. Now, why is that interesting? Because if you go to Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39, you have what is the prophetic war of Gog and Magog. Now, let me read this to you, and then I'm going to throw some stuff out there to you that I think you're going to find interesting as I have. Ezekiel 38. Now the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I am against you, O Gog, the prince of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and lead you out with all your army, horses, and horsemen, all splendidly clothed, a great company with bucklers and shields, and all of them handling swords. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya are with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all its troops, the house of Togarmah and the far north, and all its troops. Many people are with you. Okay, now let me tell you who these nations are first before we move on. Okay, so you've got Magog and Rosh, which is today Russia and the former Soviet republics. Okay, so here's your Russian involvement in the future war of Gog and Magog. Then you have Persia that's mentioned. That's today Iran. Okay, so Iran is mentioned. Then you have Cush, which is Sudan, Ethiopia, which is, again, Sudan and Ethiopia. Then you have Put, which is Libya, Algeria, and Tunisia. And then you have Gomer, Meshach, and Tubal, which again today can translate to Turkey, possibly Germany and Austria. Okay, so again, I'm going to tell you right now, when you start studying this, guys, you're going to get multiple theological stances on this, multiple theological interpretations, all the way from the timing of this war, from the players that are involved in this war, and so on and so forth. So again, this is just one perspective. You guys can research. You can do your homework on this. Okay, now let me go back up here. I want to bring out the things that I've always pointed out that I think is interesting about this war. So I've given you the players of Psalms 83. I've given you the players of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38 and 39. But watch what it says in this chapter of Ezekiel 38, which is more detailed than the war of Psalm 83. Okay? All right. Here's what it says. Verse 7, 38:7. Prepare yourself and be ready, you and all your companies. Who? I just named those companies that are gathered about you, and be a guard for them. Now, I want to show you I'm going to highlight some stuff. After many days, you will be visited. In the latter years, you will come. Okay? So it says, after many days, in the latter years. So many scholars believe that these are references to the last days or the end times. Okay, do y'all follow me on that? I hope you do. You will come into the land of those brought back from the sword, and gather from many people on the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. Okay, so this is speaking of a time frame in which Israel was left desolate. It didn't seem like they were going to flourish again. It seemed like that they were outcasted. But it's the prophet Ezekiel speaks that in the time to come, when this war will happen, it will happen when Israel has been brought back from the sword. It will happen in the latter years, after many days, after which it seemed like they were desolate, and they were brought out of the nations. Guys, so we know, according to prophecy, Israel was reborn as a nation in 1948. Jerusalem was reinstated in 1967. So we know that this prophetic war could have not happened until after 48 and 67. Okay, are you following me? And then it says, and now all them dwell safely. Now stop. Okay, I'm going to prove to you that this cannot happen right now. The war of Gog and Magog cannot happen right now because Israel is not dwelling in safety. They still have walls up. They're still in constant, there's rockets being fired into them all the time. Guys, they are far from living in safety. So if anybody gets up and says, well, this could happen today, the war of Gog and Magog could happen right now. No, it can't, because Israel's still dwelling in safety. They still have their walls standing tall. They're not in a time of safety, all right? Let's go to verse 9. You will ascend, who? The armies of Gog and Magog, coming like a storm, covering the land like a cloud. You and all your troops and many peoples with you. Now we're going to dig deeper. Verse 10. Thus saith the Lord God, on that day it shall come to pass that the thoughts will arise in your mind, and you will make an evil plan. You will say, quote, I will go up against a land of unwalled villages. Again, stop right there. Again, this cannot happen today, friends, because Israel is not dwelling in unwalled cities and villages. Let's go on. I will go to a peaceful people who dwell safely. Cannot happen today. All of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates. All right? So again, there's coming a time, and I'll get to that in just a second. I'm going to give you my personal assessment on the timing of when this could happen. There's coming a time when, okay, let's go back up. God says, I will put a hook in your jaw and lead you out and turn you around and bring you down. So let me go on down here. All right. Verse 14, therefore, son of man, or let me go back up here. Hold on. Let's go to verse 12. To take plunder and to take booty, to stretch out your hand against the waste places that are again inhabited, and against a people gathered from the nations. Do you know that there's a prophecy that Israel would be gathered from the east, from the south, from the west, and from the north? And it even says that the exodus that will come will be greater than the exodus that came out of Egypt. Guys, that's been happening for a long time, that the Jewish people would come and God would gather them back into their homeland. Well, that's happening right now. And he says that during this time, he says, then this war will take place. All right? So he says, against the people gathered from the nations who have acquired livestock and goods, who dwell in the midst of the land. Again, the prophet Isaiah talked about that Israel would blossom again. It would produce livestock again. It would produce produce again. That it would produce water and irrigation again. All these things have already been fulfilled. Those things have come to pass. Israel is blossoming again. They have irrigation again. They're fruitful again. They're coming back into the land again. They've been resurrected. Can these bones live? They've been reinstated as a nation. 1948, 67. They fought the 6-Day War, and Jerusalem was reinstated as the capital again. So all these things, those parts of these elements of prophecy have come to pass. So again, but I'm going to say this again, but they are not dwelling in safety without walled cities. That has not happened. All right. Now watch. Here's what he says. All right. Let me go on down. And he says, Sheba, Dedan, and the merchants of Tarshish, and all their young lions will say to you, have you come to take plunder? Have you gathered your army to take booty, to carry away silver and gold, to take away livestock and goods, to take great plunder? Again, there has been a great debate on who exactly those nations are. Not so much Sheba, Dedan, and Tarshish, but the young lions, okay? Some say that it's America and Britain that will stand off and they will not involve themselves in this future war of Gog and Magog, but instead will stay out of it and they will watch it come to pass or take place. Now, let me move on, guys. All right, so here's the assessment of what I've come up with. All right, so again, I realize, I want to say this up front, some people will put this in a different chronological order. Some people has this war of Gog and Magog at the end of the tribulation. Some have it in the middle of the tribulation. Some have it at the beginning of the tribulation. Some have already said that Psalms 83 war has already been fulfilled in times past. And some say that it is a future war. So again, you're going to get all kinds of different theological, and even here you'll see this on Facebook Live. People will put up their opinions and put up their stances on it, and that's okay. You guys can discuss it among yourselves. I'm only giving you something to talk about and to discuss and to chew on, if you would, from a prophetic perspective, all right? So it appears from everything that we draw up here that there at least looks like to be as a series of wars that will lead, watch this, a series of wars that will take place that will ultimately lead to the fulfillment of Isaiah 17, which talks of Damascus being destroyed or wiped out. Now, friends, listen, Damascus is the capital of Israel, and it has never been destroyed, but it appears to be that somewhere down the road, through a series of wars, through a military conflicts, that Isaiah 17 will be fulfilled, which is the destruction of Damascus of Syria. Okay? And as a result of that, okay, this is why you see Syria involved in a Psalm 83 war, okay, but they're not involved in the Ezekiel 38-39 Gog and Magog war. Why not? Have you ever asked yourself, why is Syria not involved in that war? It's in my opinion that through these series of wars, Psalm 83 being one of those, the outcome will be absolute destruction, will result in the destruction of Damascus, the fulfillment of Isaiah 17, which will force the United Nations to bring about some type of false peace. Now, it's either A or B. You ready? Either the United Nations will step in and they will demand some type of false peace, okay? Or B, the Antichrist will arise on the scene. Now, you guys can do whatever you want with that as far as the timing of the rapture, because some theologians will put the rapture being at the beginning of the Ezekiel 38-39 war of Gog and Magog war, or they'll put it in the midst of it, or they'll put it after it for all those who believe that the rapture will happen after the tribulation. So again, isn't it fun? This is what I deal with all the time, and I'll get the hate mails, and people can't have a healthy discussion about it. Instead, they want to cut down and criticize each other, but I'm just trying to have a healthy discussion on biblical prophecy. Either way, it's exciting because I believe we're living in the time to see these things fulfilled. Okay, so again, A, the destruction of Damascus, which I believe could happen in the midst of the Psalms 83 war, will either force the United Nations to bring about some type of peace, or B, this will produce the Antichrist to rise on the scene, and he will sign a 7-year peace treaty, a false treaty, or C, both, okay? Now, as a result of that, watch this. Again, I can't be dogmatic. I'm just showing you some of the things that I've talked about, that I thought was interesting in my own study, and I'm presenting these things. Okay, as a result of this, Israel will be swayed or forced by hand by the United Nations into a time of false security. Okay? Now, this could be the treaty that the Antichrist capitalizes on, and he signs this treaty. Remember, you could talk about that, and you can talk about this in the book of Daniel, okay? You want scripture for this? Okay, now watch. So, as a result of this, 1 Thessalonians 5:3, for when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. Now watch this. Again, let's go back up here, Ezekiel 38. It says that when this conflict happens, Syria's not mentioned. They've disappeared. Where'd they go? I believe, again, they've been wiped out before you get to this war, and that's why they're not mentioned, okay? So Syria's not mentioned. B, and here's B, it says the conditions of Israel when the invasion happens, and that's this. Number 1, that it happens after many days. Number 2, it happens in the latter days. Number 3, it says that they will be dwelling in safety. Number 4, it says they will have unwalled villages. They will be dwelling without walls. They will have neither bars nor gates. All right. Now, again, what would produce that environment in Israel? I'm going to tell you what will produce it is a false treaty of peace. That's what's going to get Israel to lower their guard, lower the gates, lower the bars, lower the walls, and lower their guard. Okay, so again, and this would make more sense of why they say when they say peace and safety, what happens, guys? God himself puts a hook in the jaws of the armies and pulls them back. Again, a series of wars. So it seems like there's been wars. So they've already came in, are you following me, to invade Israel, Psalm 83, and they backed off. And then there's a time of safety and peace. And then God puts a hook in their jaw and says, we're going to bring you back after a time of peace. Now, what's interesting, again, there will be a prolonged time where Israel, again, will lower their guard. And it even says during Ezekiel 38:39, during this process of this war, it says in Ezekiel 39:9 something very intriguing. Quote, then those who dwell in the cities of Israel will go out and set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields and bucklers, the bows and arrows, the javelins and the spears, and they will make fires with them. You ready for this? For 7 years. Wow. So for 7 years, okay, it says the people of Israel will burn weapons for 7 years. Isn't that interesting? 7 years. Again, if you know the book of Daniel, it talks about, and most scholars will tell you, that there's that 7-year peace treaty, okay? Now, so what happens after this? Then you've got the Antichrist, again, depending on your timing of the rapture and when the Antichrist invades. Again, we know that according to the book of Daniel, he signs a peace treaty for 7 years. And then for 42 months or 3.5 years into this treaty, he breaks his treaty. He invades the temple in Jerusalem, sets up his throne, okay, and declares himself as God. And then the Bible says the kings of the east, 200 million man army, will come over the river Euphrates that's dried up, and they will invade the temple to come against the Antichrist. Then the next scene is Jesus returns at the end of the 7 years to defeat his enemies at Armageddon. That's this final conflict, resulting in Israel acknowledging that Jesus is the Son of God. All right. And then Jesus gathers the people from all over the world for the sheep and the goat judgment, the great white throne judgment, which again, and then we enter in the millennial kingdom. So again, I cannot be dogmatic on this, guys, but I'm only giving you a kind of a chronological order of things that I've studied. Now, am I open to discussion on this? Yes. Am I open-minded about the timing of the rapture, the timing of the Gog and Magog war, the timing of the Psalm 83 war, the timing of the invasion of the temple in Jerusalem, the timing of the rise of the Antichrist? Sure, absolutely. Because again, I've heard many debates, many arguments, and many proposals on all sides, and I'm open-minded, and I'm not one of those who, and I've dealt with these people. They get very militant, they get very angry, they get ugly, they get nasty, they'll cuss you out. Yes, they'll cuss you out, and they'll send you ugly hate mail if you don't agree with their theological standpoint on the timing of this or that or this or whatever the case may be. So again, I'm throwing some stuff out at you. I've given you a prophetic update on the events that are taking place and transpiring with the nation of Israel right now as we speak. And I've given you why we need to pay attention to these from a prophetic standpoint and see. I've given you things, really, I hope that provokes you to study for yourself, to dig into the scriptures, line on line, precept on precept, here a little, there a little, that maybe you can talk about in your own time tonight at dinner with believers, or maybe in your study group at church, or whatever the case may be. So again, guys, I always love taking time to do these segments. We don't do them often because, number one, I don't want to become, we don't want to monotonous. We don't want to beat a dead horse over something. And so that's why we don't do a lot of prophetic updates, because again, it can become monotonous after a while if we do these things over and over and over again. And again, I respect other teachers and watchmen out there, but some of them do, they're constantly filling your feeds with things instead of, coming on at critical points of delivering these things. It just it's almost like a pounding rain that never stops. So I don't want to do that, because I believe you lose your effectiveness and you become an echo and not a voice, and we don't want to do that. We want to maintain integrity and we want to be effective, and that's what I want to do. So again, we love you guys. We appreciate your prayers and your support of End Time Headlines. Again, if you've not subscribed or bookmarked our main website, it's endtimeheadlines.org, endtimeheadlines.com. If you're watching this by Facebook Live, you can go up to the top. It should be on the first part of the comments. That'll be our website. Please go there, subscribe to us, bookmark us. Again, I've talked about this, Facebook, Twitter, and all these social media outlets, they're suppressing these posts, they're suppressing articles, they're suppressing updates, videos, and all that, because they want you to pay to get more visibility. So a lot of you guys, unless you're subscribing to the main website, you may miss these updates, and we don't want that to happen. So we want you to emphasize, even if you're watching by YouTube, please go and subscribe. Listen, if you're watching by Facebook, we do have a YouTube channel. You can find it. Just type in End Time Headlines on the YouTube search engine bar right there, and you should find our site. Please go there and subscribe, where you can find these updates and many other messages that will encourage you and equip you and edify you as we release those. Again, to support this ministry, we put up the link on Facebook. You'll see it here on YouTube as well. Again, you can click on that, and you can give as the Lord puts on your heart to support this ministry. Also, our physical mailing address, we'll put that up on Facebook as well, is P.O. Box 2312, Clarksville, Indiana. And again, our zip code is 47131. So again, guys, we love you guys. God bless you. As we get in more updates on this situation in the Middle East and with Israel and Syria and all this, we'll put them up on our main website. So have a good day, guys. God bless you, and we'll see you soon.